The M of magical stands for motivation. What are the characteristics of successful, inspired, motivated people? The first thing, for me, the most important thing that I've seen all over the world is they think logical. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever watched television late at night? After those strange programs, yeah, you know what I mean, okay? After those programs, they have about 2, 3 in the morning these home shopping network channels, and they sell you all sorts of stuff, and there's this person presenting this awesome gadget for $39.99, buy now, and you get another $3 million worth of nonsense with it. You've seen those? Buy now, phone lines are open. You look at this gadget, you go, damn, that's clever, but it's so simple. Why didn't I think of it? Why didn't you? You see, today we live in such a complex world that we've forgotten about basics. Have you ever been at work that there's been a problem that has to be resolved? And you have meetings upon meetings and meetings. I love this in corporate environments. They actually have a meeting to decide when to have a meeting. Another crazy thing. But anyway, that's another talk on its own. But now you have these meetings because there's a problem. You have, like, over a period of 3 months, how many meetings and task teams, and but when action must be taken to come up with a solution, and when eventually you do find the solution to the problem, you all sit and go, but we should have thought of that in 5 minutes. How come that doesn't happen? Because we overcomplicate things. If you just look at a normal mobile phone today, how that's changed from just a phone to SMS, MMS, video. I mean, it's a full computer. Things are getting more and more complex. Our minds are working faster and faster that we forget the basics. There's a reason I showed you in the introduction the trick with a nappy. Because you see, if you think logical, you would have immediately cottoned on to the nappy in the bag. But you didn't, because your brain is working too intelligently and too overcomplicated. So all the simple things I'm going to talk to you about during this course are actually my nappy philosophies. Right, so why didn't you think of that gadget on the Home Shopping Network channel? Because you don't think basics. If you read the biographies of some of these successful people out there, you will notice that some of the things that have made, or the majority of things that have made them successful, have been simple things that aren't really that difficult. They've targeted things and gaps in the markets that have been logical, staring everyone in the face, but they were the first to see it. Now, talking about logic, I need to do a quick test to see how logical you think. Now on the screen I've got 5 words: integrity, honesty, ethics, humility, and sensitivity. To me, these are characteristics of truly successful, inspired people. And I want you at home to choose one. Now I've got to say right up front, when I do this in front of a live audience, obviously the power is there. I'm going to explain to you what happens. But I also need to get this concept of logical thinking across to you. I sit with a live audience, and genuinely anyone can shout out any of those 5 characteristics to me. So let's say that somebody's now, or you have chosen ethics as an example. I will go, I knew you were going to choose ethics, and I can prove it, because in my pocket over here, in the shirt pocket, I have an envelope, and in this envelope is one piece of paper, and on this piece of paper is printed one word, which is ethics, the one you chose. Oh! Now can you imagine doing that in front of a live audience? And the word they freely chose is the one that you've got in the envelope. The people freak out. Now people come up with solutions second to none. They go, you know, it's psychological. Research would most probably indicate that 98.4% of people, if asked to choose between those 5 characteristics, would go for ethics because of all the corruption in the financial system and this in corporates and wah, and they'd come with 3,000 different explanations. Or they'd go, it was a plant. It was a shill in the audience. You spoke about that beforehand. Everybody has these complex solutions. But what is the logical answer? What would happen if that person had not chosen ethics and had chosen, for example, honesty? Well, then I would have taken the envelope out of this pocket. You see, integrity is the envelope in this pocket here. Sensitivity is the one over there. You see, humility is the one in here. I can see you laughing at home watching this going, no kidding. Can you imagine the power of this with a live audience? But I hope I've brought the message across to you, because when I did this trick and explained it to you, did you immediately come onto that thought that, I have an envelope in every pocket? Most people don't. So, Do we have to work on your logical thinking? I'm going to assume, yes we do. Speaking about logical thinking, I don't know if you heard the story about the chap that goes to the library. He goes up to the librarian, he says, excuse me, where are your books on suicide? She looks at him and says, get out of here, I know your types, you never bring them back again. You're going to have to get used to the humor that I throw in every now and then. But if you think about it, why is that joke funny? Because it's logical. On a similar vein, there's another story about two chaps sitting having breakfast, and the one guy says to his mate, what's wrong, you look so depressed? He says, oh man, I am depressed. He says, what's wrong? He says, oh, I'm so depressed, I was going to commit suicide this morning. And his friend said, no, are you crazy, what did you do? He says, well, I decided to take 1,000 aspirin. He says, 1,000 aspirin, are you crazy, what happened? And he said, well, after the first one I felt better. Yeah, it's logical thinking. Now, when you talk about logical thinking, years ago, as a magician, I used to levitate my wife in the air. And people have always asked me, how do you float someone in the air? Well, it's logical. You feed them on self-raising flour 3 days before you... Okay, I'm kidding. I am kidding. Right. I've got to throw in a bit of humor every now and then. Got to keep you awake and alive. Now, the first and the most important thing for me, and we're going to be talking about this throughout this whole course, is to be inspired, to be successful, you've got to think logical. And I'm going to show you how to do it, go through processes for you to think logical. The second important thing for me, for successful people, and this is really something that you need to understand and never forget. And if you read any life story on any person that's really achieved something, who started from nowhere, they'll all say this. The biggest thing is, never give up. Yes, you can laugh at this photo. It took me a long time to take it. Let's talk about this photo. And I don't mean to be offensive with this photo at all, but this photo represents to me a typical person when things don't go their way. What do they want to do? Stick their head between their legs and kiss the world goodbye and just give up. Now, I'm not one to quote other people, but I have one favorite saying in life, and that's by a chap called Thomas Edison. Does the name ring a bell? Never mind. Okay. He said, I've not failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work. Isn't that the coolest saying you've ever heard in your whole life? I've not failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work. Now let's backtrack on that and let's look at the everyday person. When things don't go your way, what do you want to do? You want to just give up. You see? Now here's a man back then that's already understood that concept. Now, the most successful people on earth, here's a frightening fact, have failed more than anybody else. But they've never seen failure as failure. That is the difference. They've seen it as a learned experience. You see, and where does the fault lie? The fault actually lies in our schooling system. And I've read various schools of thought on this. Originally they say it was a Prussian system based on a military system to control you. Other people say it started in the Americas for the industrialization that had occurred. They needed factory workers that didn't think. That's why you have schools in a row, in a system, everybody does the same, etc., etc. It's for control. The schooling system has been the one system that has controlled us and actually been against us rather than for us in many respects. Because it hasn't taught us to think for ourselves. It's taught us that failure is bad. Because what did you learn at school when you failed? Ha! You're stupid! And you've been conditioned, classically conditioned, to believe that failure is bad. Let me ask you a question as human beings. How else do you learn if you don't make mistakes? We have been intrinsically programmed as humans, as babies already, to learn from our mistakes, not to give up, not to see failure as bad. Think of it as a baby. Look at a baby. When a baby starts walking for the first time, it doesn't get up and walk. It gets up, it attempts to walk, it falls. How many times does that child try and walk until it gets it right? It doesn't take the first time it fails as, oh, that's it. But had it been taken through the schooling system, believe me, the first time it fell, it would have just given up. That's how messed up we are from our schooling system, if you think about it. So, the conditioning, everything has played a role here. You've got to understand that failure is not a bad thing if you learn from it. Here's the biggie. If you learn from it, you have to learn from your mistakes. If you do the same mistake twice, I've got bad news for you. You're an idiot. Okay? You don't do the same mistake twice. You learn from the mistake. If you read the biographies of self-made successful people, you will see how for years and years they struggled. They never achieved anything. And then suddenly they did. What made them struggle for so long? What made them believe in themselves? These are all the things I'm going to be covering and showing you how to do. It's that belief in the self, going for your dream, that every time you get stood on, every time something like that happens, you pick yourself up and you keep on going for it again. You see, there's a wonderful story that goes, and I do this in my live presentations, where I take, let's say, a €100 note, and I ask somebody in the audience, do you want the €100 note? And they all go, yeah! Then I crumple it up, and I unfold it, it's all crinkled. I say, you still want the €100 note? Everybody goes, yeah! Then I throw it on the floor and I stand on it. And I pick it up, it's all dirty. I say, do you still want it? They all go, yeah! And no matter what I do to the note, everybody still wants it. And the message behind that is, no matter what happens to you in life, whether you get older, you get wrinkled, whether you get trodden on, whether you get squashed, whatever happens, your value never changes. As with that €100 note, the value doesn't change. If anything, the experiences we have in life add to our value as human beings. And this is something we need to understand. So, as an introduction to discover your magic, and this was only the introduction, the serious stuff is only still coming in the next lessons. As an introduction, the M stands for motivation. Successful, inspired, motivated people, there are two things that make them stand out from everybody else. And these are the things that you are going to be learning. Is to think logical and to never ever give up. Then success will come your way. So that's the M for now, and now we're going to move on to the A.